the world is watching and the world expects better. That's what the chief prosecutor at the International Criminal Court has said as his team continues its field trip and evidence collecting mission inside of Ukraine. Karim Khan says this war crimes investigation, which has the support of dozens of countries, represents, quote, myriad challenges, opportunities and difficulties. Well, for more on this angle, I'm joined now here in the studio by the international criminal lawyer William Julié. Thank you so much for coming in to talk to us here on France 24. As I was saying, this evidence collecting mission is now a few days old. Do we know, though, how long the probe might go on for?
No, we don't know, but it's going to go on for some time for sure. Collecting evidence is not an easy task. It's not when there's no war. It's even more complicated when there is war, of course. But we have experienced that these investigations have been carried out many times in the past years and in many places in the world. And it does work out in the end. The team is going to collect technical evidence on who was shooting, when, how, on what kind of ammunitions were used, what kind of bombs, and also, of course, witness statements from the ground.
And it is, of course, important to remember that both sides are being probed here.
Absolutely. When a country is a member of the Statute of Rome, or when a country, and this is the situation here for Ukraine, decides to declare that it is going to acknowledge the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court, it is the two ways. That means that you are going to be held liable if you have been committing crimes, but also if you have been a victim of these so-called war crimes.
Now, for those people watching at home that might not be international legal experts like you are, maybe it's worth just reminding our viewers what constitutes a war crime, what constitutes a crime against humanity.
We're talking here about war crimes for the moment. This is the most obvious crime that has been already committed in Ukraine by the Russian troops, maybe the other way around, but we're talking more about these crimes from the Russian troops. War crimes is when you are using your troops not in a way that you should be regarding civil populations, when you are bombing highly populated areas, when you are using some kind of weapons that you are not supposed to use, for example, the cluster bombs, then you can be challenged for war crimes. Also, if you are not treating prisoners properly, you can be also challenged for war crimes. Crimes against humanity is another kind of international criminal crime, and these are more about when you are, for example, committing murders, assassinations on a large scale of the local populations.
Now, Moscow doesn't actually recognise the Hague-based court, which was set up back in 1997. Does that pose any problem at all?
It does not, because the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court here is coming via this declaration from Ukraine, so the ICC has jurisdiction to investigate on these crimes.
Now, the West has already been speaking, diplomats, leaders, talking about the horrors committed on the ground, the atrocities committed on the ground. But if no concrete evidence in the eyes of the ICC is found during this collecting mission, what happens next?
I think there are going to be elements of evidence, but let's say nothing happens, or let's say that evidence is collected, but that for one or another reason the investigations don't go through, then there won't be any trial before the ICC. The process is a long process. First, you've got the investigation from the prosecutor's office, and then you have also a second stage of reviewing of the evidence by the special section of the ICC who deals with that, the preliminary section. And then if things are ready to go to trial, then it is possible that a warrant of arrest is issued against people who can be targeted by this warrant, and that could be Vladimir Putin, and then maybe one day a trial, but this is in a long time.
And just briefly, away from the ICC, are there other legal options that the international community has?
Yes, there are. There's the European Court of Human Rights option, which has already been tried by Ukraine last year, but for the crimes in Crimea, for example. There is also a possibility to apply to the International Court of Justice that also has been done, and maybe the last recourse could also be, because we know that the Council of Security of the United Nations won't work because Russia has got a veto there, so that is not an option. But maybe they also could be a shot regarding Interpol. Russia is part of Interpol and backs a lot of its judicial international cooperation requests on Interpol. And I know there are talks at the moment that Russia could be thrown out of Interpol, or at least suspended, as Syria was in 2012 and just has been put back in the system.
Okay, William Julié, that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for coming in to talk to us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome.